Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. It's really loud out here with all the cicadas, but I'm hoping that this little microphone will do the trick. So here goes hoping. Um, it is Monday after the Psi Games, and I just wanted to do a little post Psi Games recap of the things I experienced, some of my takeaways and reflections, and I also want to share with you some of the cool technological tools that I learned about that you can use to practice your own psi abilities or to just brush up on some skills or learn new skills that you've never even tried before. So we'll get into all that. I'm Shakti, and on this channel, I talk about anomalous phenomena. I've done a deep dive into UFO history. That always leads to remote viewing and the government's interest in psi abilities, which leads to consciousness studies, which takes us to where we are today. So one of the cool things that I learned at the conference is that, many people are catching on to this reality that like all of these anomalous things live under one umbrella of understanding, which is like the true nature of reality. And one of the reasons I signed up for the Psi Games was because I knew that Tom Campbell was going to be speaking at it, and he was a keynote speaker. And he is just, in my opinion, the most. He has the most comprehensive theory of everything that really allows us to make sense of all of these different things. And he's just incredible. And so that was one of the main reasons I went. And then I was also really excited to see, obviously, people competing with their abilities. I was curious to see who might come out of the woodworks. And so let me just start by showing you my badge that I got. And I thought, oh, sorry, my camera's on backwards mode because I'm filming in a different place. So I'm using my phone and I didn't turn it around. But anyway, this badge, when I got it, I was thinking like, this is really nice because a lot of these conferences, they just give you a little wristband, a little dinky wristband. And I know that like, this is like a nice hard plastic, and I know that this costs money, and I was just feeling really appreciative that like they gave us this very special thing that we could take with us. On the back you have a picture of Robert Monroe. He's pretty much the father of modern day out of body experience studies, and he's the head of, was the creator of the Monroe Institute, and he's also the person that Tom Campbell studied with. And the quote on the back says, "The greatest illusion is that mankind has limitations." So that's really the theme of the whole weekend, is letting us know that like we are limitless beings, we are consciousness, we are netted, we are entangled, we have access to all the functions of consciousness. And people have been saying this since the beginning of recorded history. Ancient yogis, Buddhists, and all other religions have different versions of explaining this psychic phenomena. Even orbs, even non-physical entities, NHI, aliens, UFOs, healing abilities, telepathy, all kinds of like psychokinesis and all these things, they're all described in so many different ways throughout time. And now is a moment in history when we all can take the next step together as humanity to change the paradigm of our understanding of science and physics to allow for all of these things to be explained, which is why Tom Campbell's theory is going to be so essential moving forward. And one of the things Tom said in his speech, which was very chilling, and very inspiring to me, and I was in the third row directly across from him. I was just like, I felt like I was in the perfect spot. I'm just in the middle, taking my notes, sitting straight, just looking right at him. It was really cool. I was very, very excited to be there in his presence because I just really love and respect his work. One of the things he said is that humanity is reaching a new kind of boss level in reality. He said for the first time in 200,000 years, we are going to have this choice to really evolve in the right direction, or potentially, things could get really bleak. And I think we all feel that and we all know that. And we've seen, how power and greed are running rampant. And when certain people throughout the weekend talked about it, they did say it was a minority, like the kind of evil powers, if you will, are a minority of humankind. That's not what most people are about, but those people are so ruthless in their pursuit of power that they really can mess things up for the rest of us. But this really incredible psychic, Pam Coronado, who works with finding missing people. She's basically worked with police departments and detectives all her career and had great success using her psi abilities to help locate missing people and solve cases. She gave us this beautiful metaphor of a dark room where she saw this vision of like somebody lighting a candle in one corner and then another person and then another across the room. And it only took about 3 or 4 people in this full room of people before the room was bright with light. So it didn't take all the people lighting their candles. It only took a small percentage of people shining their light to light up the whole room. And then her vision expanded and she saw that happening across the globe. And she saw different little lights going off in different areas of the world, and that was kind of like bringing the energy up for everyone. So this is something that I've heard Tom Campbell talk about a lot as well, which is that tipping point. It doesn't take a majority of people to elevate in consciousness for the whole world to start accelerating in that right direction of going towards love, compassion, caring for the planet, making things better. It does not take even more than 50%. It's actually a much smaller percentage because they're so powerful. The energies are so powerful that even just a few people moving in the right direction is all it takes to really kind of turn the ship around. So those messages were really encouraging and gave me a lot of hope for all of us because, there's definitely things, like I said, are looking a little bit bleak in certain areas of reality, and it can feel overwhelming and disheartening. But this whole weekend was about encouraging everyone. And another big takeaway was that this is not about everyone needs to become telepathic, everyone needs to develop psi abilities. What all of these wise elders were actually teaching us and reminding us is that, just like the yogis have said, just like I've talked about here on Shocks Talks before, the psi abilities can actually be a distraction. They are not the end goal. All that they do, because at the end of the day, a lot of them are just like party tricks. Some things can have a practical application, and that's wonderful, but we don't need any of that to live. We don't need any of that to evolve towards love or to do our sole purpose here in life. Those things are there to help us, to nudge us towards the curiosity that will bring us to that greater level of understanding about the nature of reality. And when you play that whole thing out to the end, that understanding path, you always get to the same place, and that's just love. So you can skip all of the psi abilities, you can skip all of the crazy stuff, and you can just go straight to love and you're good to go. You do not need any of this stuff. And that was a big message this weekend. And one of the people that was, helping to spread that message was this yogi, Gary Craft Craftow. I don't know. I'll have to look up his last name, but he's Hakim's yoga teacher, and Hakim Isler is the creator of all this. And he had a really beautiful message, and it was basically the same thing that I grew up learning, and the same thing that all of these people are saying, which is just, it's really about doing your own personal work, turning it within, looking at yourself. Diane Hennessy was saying the same thing. Her whole career has been working with these nonverbal autistic people. And in doing that, she has learned that all of them are actually here to teach this lesson that is really about like love and compassion. And it's this very inward looking journey. And it's not about like them being here to teach everybody else how to become telepathic. It's really just them being here to shine their light into the world. And they are just so grateful that people are listening to what they have to offer. And you and so many others probably have that same special gift and message to offer. And you don't need to be supernatural, even though you all are, but like you don't need to be spectacular to do it. All you have to do is exist. And sometimes my sister gets into this mood of like, oh, I wish I was doing more in the world, like more outward facing. She lives a very quiet life and a peaceful life, and she feels like she's not doing a whole lot. And I had to remind her, like, just you being you is a lot. The principles that you carry as a person. She's a vegan. She's very loving, very gentle of spirit. She's also fiery. She has energy, but she's very committed to kindness and caring for the planet and the animals. And she's a good family member, and she's a good sister, and she helps everyone in her life in different little ways. And she may not be doing something big and flashy out in the world, but that stuff doesn't matter. It's the quality of your being and what you do when no one's looking that really counts the most. And I was sitting around with my family last night because I'm visiting my family now. And the five of us were in a room talking about all this stuff and just having a really deep and heartfelt, you know, communication around like our lives and our emotions and our spirituality and where we're going. And I said to all of them, like, just the fact that we all can be so real together and sit in this room together as adults after all this time being in a family and have these kinds of conversations, and there's no formalities and nobody's trying to prove anything to anyone, and it's just love and openness. Like, that's not normal. They take it for granted, and I'm like, you guys, this is really special. Just the fact that we're here together shows me that we're all doing fine and we all deserve to feel good about our lives and where we're at, because it's those simple things that really matter the most. So that was one of my big takeaways from this weekend, and something that I think everyone here could benefit from, this reminder that like you are enough. Everything you're doing to grow as an individual is what life is all about. And so it's really about facing our shadow, facing our own inner demons, taking responsibility, like taking that outward judgment and kind of trying to turn that awareness back on the self, not in a judgmental way, but in a loving and compassionate way, which will then allow us to be more accepting and loving of others. We're not, people aren't here to try to piss you off. People aren't here to try to make your life harder, even though that will happen. It will feel like that sometimes. They're just doing the best they can, whatever that is, they're doing the best they can. And it can be relieving to actually just allow people to be what they are, and then remember, okay, I'm here to do my own journey. What is it that I need to focus on just today? And usually there's a very simple thing in front of you that is not glamorous, like, well, I need to clean the bathroom, I need to do laundry, I need to get groceries, oh, I haven't fed myself in however many hours, I need to find a way to make a meal. And then once you get your personal bubble mastered, then you can start being more effective in greater ways. So some of these teachers talked about the bottom up versus the top down approach. The bottom up kind of, Tom has called it like pulling people up from their own bootstrap, pulling yourself up from your own bootstraps, which I know people don't like that term because it has connotations now, based on mass media and stuff. So if you don't like that, think of grassroots, because that's really what he's talking about. It's like the spiritual path, looking within and moving yourself up. And the top down is actually dealing on the worldly level of reality, this physical matter reality in the material realm. There's things that have to be done. Danny Sheehan is a great example of someone working in both ways. He's working spiritually with the New Paradigm Institute from the bottom up on the consciousness stuff, but on the top down approach, he's working as a lawyer with the Congress to pass the amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act to help us move forward with this disclosure stuff. Danny Sheehan has been a social justice warrior and a civil rights litigator all his life. He's helped so many people in so many different ways. You can look him up. I've talked about him here on Shocks Talks before. But he's very committed. He has seen some things and learned some things, and he is very passionate and fiery about protections that need to be put in place within the systems of power that be, because that's what we have to work with. So that's an example of like working from the top down and the bottom up to meet us in the middle. Some people call it putting legs on your prayers. You can't just be spiritual and esoteric. You have to take practical actions in reality. So once you have your own personal shit handled, then you can start going out in the world and making a difference and doing things that are meaningful and helping other people. And, you have to kind of be able to tackle things from both angles in order to be effective in those ways. Tom Campbell is another example of this, because not only is he working on this consciousness side of getting people to understand this spiritual reality, he's working from the top down when it comes to the physics experiments and the science, and working within the realm of, the analytical mind and the scientific Western mind, and what needs to shift in that paradigm for us all to get where we're trying to go here. So I found that really inspiring too. because, it is good to just be a shining light in the world, but also it's good to go out and do something useful. And it's really powerful if you can be doing both and thinking about both at the same time. So I wanted to flip through some of my notes from this weekend. I know I'm just rambling and spewing right now, but I also wonder if you can hear the bugs. I love them. I went to bed with like a whole chorus of bugs last night, and I thought it was really, really peaceful. And I also, here we go. I also had really wild dreams all night, which was interesting because, as you know, if you've been watching this channel, I've been on this dream quest where for about 40 days or 40 nights, I wrote down my dream every single morning. And also, if I woke up at like 3 a.m., I would write it down. And now I decided to stop writing it and just see if I could keep remembering them. And I had like more dreams last night than I have in this whole 40 days. I had like 5 separate dreams. They were all really intense, kind of cool, interesting, but like a lot of different emotions, which makes sense after a whole weekend of being around psychic people and then coming back to my childhood home. And, there's a lot of emotions stirred up. So, anyway, it's been interesting. But I wanted to go back into these notes. So I talked a little bit about the first lecture that I saw was John B. Alexander, and his whole talk was about things that shouldn't have happened but did happen. So he went over a lot of spiritual phenomena from around the world in terms of like indigenous cultures and shamans and dream workers. And he also talked about UFOs. He talked about psi phenomena. He talked about healings, and that was a really interesting talk. I'm not going to go too deep into it right now because I just want to skim over everything and kind of skip to the end of the conference and the games themselves. But we had people, Kimla, I don't know how to say her name, Desroisier, maybe. She studies Tibetan Buddhism and has been initiated into that. And she talked about siddhis, which we've talked about here before, and those are the powers that can be attained, based on the Buddhist tradition and the yogic tradition. They both talk about siddhis, and those are just things that you get along the way. But like we said earlier, those are the things that can easily be a distraction to the end goal. And some people over the weekend even mentioned that talking to non-physical entities is not recommended by some of these Buddhist teachers and yogic teachers. So for everyone who's really into channeling and all these practices, good little thing to keep in mind that maybe it's not always in your best interest to get too far out on that whole, talking to dead people, talking to non-physical entities and aliens and all the other stuff, because it can be not only distracting, but you can actually open up to like things that are not great and not beneficial to your forward progress. Now, that being said, I do want to make a little note here that I believe that it's our own responsibility to make our own decisions about these things. So I'm the kind of person who I'm like, that's cool that you said that. I will consider that, but I'm going to do what I want. That's just me. And I will accept the risk and the karma that comes with me making my own choices, because I'm all about making my own choices in reality. And I want to learn the lessons, even if they're hard, even if they're messy. I want to know it myself. It doesn't work for me if just somebody else told me what to do and I did it and it worked. I want to know it for myself. So I personally like to experiment and test things, and I learn from my own experience, but I'm a very controlled person. I'm very disciplined, and I have a ton of tools in my toolbox. So I'm not saying I would recommend this path for everyone, but I am like a fuck around and find out kind of girl myself, and I have done that quite a bit in my life, and it's been crazy, and it's been pretty scary at times, but also like very rewarding for me. So I thought about this morning, this image of like someone who is doing, I don't know, the Appalachian Trail or hiking a great hike for the first time. And they're going on this hike and they come across, okay, in this area I saw a bear, in that area I saw a snake. This area I accidentally ate a poison plant. Over here I found food, over here I found shelter. And they're doing their little journal and they're leaving it for the next traveler that comes. And that traveler is going to look at that journal and think about it. If they go on that same journey, are they going to have the exact same experience? No, absolutely not. They're going to look at that journal and they're going to say, okay, this person saw a snake and they were scared of it. And then they go to that same place and maybe that day they only see a squirrel. Or maybe they do see the snake, but the snake is chill that day and it didn't bother that person. And they have a whole different experience. Or they go to the place where the bear was, and when they go there, the bear is scared of them and the bear runs away. Or maybe that day the bear eats them. It's like there's so much randomness in this reality, and every individual is also bringing their own vibration and they're on their own journey. So even the obstacles and the boons or the prizes or benefits that you can gain along the way, they're all going to be different for all of us. Someone else said, like, I found food over here, and you go to eat that food, but you're actually allergic to that food, when for that other person, it was the perfect food. So take it all with a grain of salt. Everyone who is giving spiritual teachings, I think a lot of them are coming from a place of love, but there's so much ego that we have blind spots to our own egos, and there's so much like, well, now I did it this way and I know everything. Even Tom Campbell, even my favorite teachers, even the most brilliant people who I love and admire, I thank them for everything they have to offer. And I know that in a way I'm on my own out here. Like, there will be some things that are the same, but there will be some things that are different. And I'm always keeping my eyes open to that, because I'm here, like I said, to find out for myself what's what. So I think it's all about intention, and everyone is offering the best of what they have with good intentions, but it doesn't mean it's for me. It doesn't mean it's for you. Even the things that I share here, some of it may be useful and some of it may be totally not useful to you. So we need to be empowered to discern for ourselves what to take and what to leave. And the only way to know is to actually test it. So I think this is true of all spiritual teachings. And that's why, if you want to talk to non-physical entities and find out what you have to learn from that experience, maybe that's your path. And even if someone else said this is a distraction, it's like, well, maybe for you it was, but maybe for me it's the direct way to the source. Who knows? So many different things like this. Some people have a strong drive to attain a certain ability when it comes to psi abilities, and maybe they need to just follow that through to the end and find out what they got to find out. It's kind of fun, it's kind of chaotic. This life path that we're all on is pretty wild, but I do think no matter what we're doing, the coming back to love part is consistently true, and I do believe that that is the most sound advice that anyone could give and that they are all giving. So I'm pretty down with that one. I don't need to do a whole lot of testing around that, but even that, I do respect the fact that there are going to be people. I thought I just saw a creature. I'm seeing things. Okay. There are going to be people out there who need to walk a darker path. They need to do things differently. I don't know. It's not my business to explain that. I don't know what that's about, but I respect that there are just things that are different from what I need to do. My business is to do my path. Somebody else's business is to challenge those of us who are trying to grow. And they may appear as a bad guy in this reality, but maybe they're not. Who knows? That's not my business. So I keep a very open mind, but I keep myself grounded by staying focused on making my own decisions about my own life path and having clarity when it comes to that. And that feels good to me. So, this woman, Kimla, did talk about how orbs do come from the Tibetan tradition, and they were called tigles or tigles. I don't know how they say it, but it's Tigles. And it's funny because these orbs will appear in these spiritual paintings and they have things in them like souls or animals or symbols. And so it almost makes you think that, like, this orb phenomena, which has also been around for a long time, might be some kind of phenomena that represents beings from other realms or dimensions who are penetrating through into this reality, and they appear here as orbs. Who knows? I don't know. But apparently the Tibetans had a lot of things to say about orbs and lots of documentation of their interpretation of this phenomena. And Chris Bledsoe, who wrote The UFO of God, is someone who he sees orbs. He was here at the conference. He gave a great speech, and also he brought people up for sky watches on both nights. Now, this was for like the platinum tier of guests, and I wasn't in that tier, so I didn't go to the sky watches. And the first night, he kind of knew nothing was going to happen because I could tell he made a comment like, "Well, sometimes it's harder to see in these crowded city environments, but when you're out in the country and you're out at night and it's just dark and quiet, that's the best time and place to experience the phenomena." And so that night they didn't see anything, and I was kind of like, I knew they weren't going to see anything based on how he was talking about it. But then on the second night they did. So that was pretty cool. And people took videos and they saw stuff moving around in the sky. I saw some of the footage and it looks anomalous the way it was moving. So that was interesting. I'm talking too fast and my throat's getting dry. People talked a lot about doubt and belief and skepticism and open-mindedness, and my reflection on all of this is that it can be, for me personally, I think that being too wishy-washy and too open-minded is a trap, and I think being too rigid is a trap. I think there's a middle ground, a flexibility. So it's like having a system of understanding that works for you that's flexible. So for me, for example, I like to work with Tom Campbell's theory. That's what works for me. And then sometimes I let it wiggle out a little bit around the edges and I explore things that might be slightly outside of that, or his flavor of looking at it, and I consider different possibilities. But I come back to like a somewhat formed or shaped structure of belief and understanding when it comes to these things, because I think some people are too chaotic with it and it's just not beneficial after a certain point. So like you can tell that they don't know what's going on and they'll say things like, "Well, yeah, like all realities are happening simultaneously." So yeah, I think, cuz somebody asked a question about like manifesting and like, what does it mean when you manifest you being the winner and you're the only winner and there can only be one winner, and that feels kind of weird because everybody else didn't get what they want. And the answer that came back was kind of like, well, in some reality everybody's the winner. And I'm like, that doesn't really work for me, like it doesn't work for me. And what I think is that in this reality, which is the one that we're in, unless you're having experiences of multiple realities, then you can talk about that. If you are actually aware of other reality frames, like if you're having out of body travel or astral travel and you are traversing the other realities, what you might be doing, and what all these people said, like Dan Hennessy and Tom Campbell and others, is that you're actually accessing the Akashic Records, or the database of reality, which is virtual. It's just information about possible other realities, but you're focused in this one. This is the one that you are making choices in and that you are experiencing primarily. That's going to be true for most of us. Maybe there's other people that are dipping into this reality that are more primarily focused in another reality, but that's not me. I'm in this one, for the most part. And so are you, I'm assuming. And tell me if I'm wrong, please put it in the comments. But if you're here with me in this reality, this is the one that's happening. This is the now. This is the one that we're experiencing. And other realities that we can explore with our consciousness are actually just virtual. They're other virtual databases of possible futures, probable futures. Sometimes it can be possible alternate pasts that we didn't experience. And people will say things like, there's no time and time is a construct and da 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 da. It's like, that's fine on an ultimate level, but for the sake of this, we're in this and there is time in this reality. It's fundamental to this reality, in fact, because change occurs over time and change is the constant here. So that's happening. And so I feel like it's not helpful to be too wishy-washy, like, oh, everything's happening all at once. It's like, fine, but that's not useful to me. Like, this is what's happening. And there are rules in this rule set. And Tom describes it as like the game. So like if you are an avatar, he always talks about World of Warcraft because his kids played that game when they were growing up. If you're an avatar in that game, you're limited to the understanding of that game. The player is outside of the game. That's your individuated unit of consciousness or your soul. But the avatar, it's in the game. The avatar cannot jump out of the computer and experience the living room that the player is in. The player can, the consciousness can, but not the avatar. So as a human, with our body and our mind, we're in the game, and our consciousness is the thing that can go out because the player is outside of the game. So when we're traveling in consciousness, maybe we are experiencing timelessness. Maybe we are experiencing, everything happening all at once or whatever else. But when we're in the game, that's not really applicable. So I find it to be a huge distraction to get all like, oh, everything's happening all at once. It's like, for me, no, we're just here living as humans in reality for the most part, at least until now. The game is what it is. Maybe the rules will change. Maybe we can change them. But right now, it makes more sense to me for us to look at what's going on and appreciate it for what it is, and try to find ways to work within it. But I'm also, of course, very interested in breaking out of the game because I want to have those consciousness experiences too. So when we're channeling or accessing data from the database or tapping into our psi abilities, that's a kind of parallel processing where we're both in the game and outside of it simultaneously. And that is what everyone was doing when they were doing their remote viewing or seeing without eyes. And that is a skill that can be very, very wishy-washy until it's not. So back to the games themselves, I told you guys in the last video about this woman Dahlia and just how cool it was to see her really nail it with the seeing without eyes. And I just think that it was so stunning to me to observe the difference between people who were just kind of fumbling around, like, bless them all for putting themselves out there and everyone did amazing, but it's like a huge difference between people that have actually mastered the skill versus those who are just kind of testing the waters and do not have that high degree of accuracy, and it's just completely obvious. And I think the same can be said for basically all of the psi abilities. Some people are just 1,000% better than everyone else who's kind of dabbling. And I think for all of us, the inspiration that we could walk away from this weekend with is there is a version of all of this stuff that is so concrete and so real in terms of the practical applications. And we have now seen that. And so now we can strive for that. And we don't have to just settle for this other thing, which is like, well, was I guessing? Or did I just get lucky? Is this even statistically significant? Or is it just kind of random and I happen to get a couple things right? Like, versus that other thing where it's like, this is undeniable. This is above and beyond. She had 100% accuracy, of course, doing it one time in this one setting, but like she's done it before. And that's something. So for me, I really want to keep practicing remote viewing over time to see, because I had a good burst of luck in the beginning where I had many sessions that were obviously I was making contact with the target, and then I had a lot of flops. And now I need to go back and keep practicing. Of course, socialrv.com is the site that I use, and it's great, and I recommend signing up for it. I need to go back and practice and find out, can I really get better over time, or am I just not made for this particular skill set? Or, can I train myself, or is it something that you just are or are not good at? Do you have to be a natural psychic to do it? Things like that. I think just like learning an instrument or a dance or doing anything else that we do in reality where you have to learn a skill, there's going to be different techniques for different people. So I want to try to play with some of those techniques. Like, I took a workshop once with remote viewing where we did a method where you walk down some stairs, kind of like a self-hypnosis. And then you open a door and you see the target through that door and you perceive it. And visualizations can really help with these things. So that's something I might mess around with a little bit more. The dowsing, there was one woman who was really good. The rest of them, it was kind of hit or miss. The psychokinesis, I have to say, I was under the impression that the conditions were not totally as pure as I would have liked in terms of like possible wind interference. We're in a big room with like HVAC blowing and lots of people in it. So I would like to see the devices in a more contained setting so that we know that like nobody's breath or wind or anything is interfering with it, which is difficult because they were trying to set it up with cameras that are looking right at it so that we can see what the contestants are doing. But I do think that like that could have been better. So it'll be cool to see what they do next year with the PK. And then I did see a martial artist break steel over his own leg, which was pretty impressive. Which, you know, we've seen things like this before with people who break boards. But I also saw him fumble. He was trying to break an even thicker piece over his forearm, and I could tell that he lost his nerve right before it happened because he started to vamp a little bit and talk a little bit more. And then I kind of wish he had just known to not go forward with it. The energy wasn't right. He wasn't in the zone. And so he tried a couple times over his arm. It didn't break. And then he just broke it over his leg, which is still incredibly impressive. But I felt bad for him because I was worried about his arm because he wasn't in that zone of like pure and total concentration and like faith in his ability. And so therefore it just didn't happen. And that's the thing about this stuff. You know, it's kind of like Olympic athletes or really great basketball players. You know, one basketball player might have this amazing, I guess, like a 3-point shot or something. And, you know, they make it so much of the time, but if one little condition or one micro movement is off in that moment, they're not going to make the shot. You know, this is how sports work. We see this all the time, which is why it's good to bring these psi abilities into this kind of environment. Because even if someone usually can see without eyes, they might get nervous and not be able to do it in the moment of the game. And that's why Hakeem wanted to do this, to help us bring things into more intense like settings, because that's what life is like. We don't have perfect lab conditions in life, and we need to be able to tap into our intuition and make good decisions. And that's what he wants to inspire everyone to be able to do. So we have to give people grace. You know, people aren't machines. They're not just going to be perfect every time. You know, a classical musician who plays like some grand symphony, knows every note, knows every beat, the rhythm is in their body, but maybe they hear a baby sneeze in the back of the audience and it just catches their attention and they waver just a little bit and their bow kind of shakes and then the note goes wrong or whatever. You know, there's always little things that can come in because we live in a universe that's full of randomness and chaos. And so, you know, this is about encouraging people. And I saw where people were strong, where people wavered, where people were really confident ahead of time, and then they came in and they maybe didn't perform that well. And that's a big it's a big blow to the ego, but everyone did it with grace and love, and people had really good attitudes, and everyone was so loving and supportive of each other. There were some people commenting in the audience like, "Oh, this is awkward," or like, "Oh, this is really disappointing," and things like that. But you know, we're trying something new for the first time. It takes guts. It takes so much internal strength, you know, by Hakeem and everyone else to just put yourself out there in this way and let it be wobbly in front of a huge audience. Let us learn in real time in front of each other. That takes guts. That takes some real heart and some real courage. So at the end of the day, I feel most inspired by the human spirit of everyone who participated, who put themselves out there, who is exposing themselves to so much potential ridicule and criticism. And of course, there's always going to be debunkers, but these people who really care about the end goal, which is love, they're not going to let any of that stuff stop them. And that's how you know the real ones. You can really see it and sense it and feel it. So again, I'm honored that I was there for the first ever Psi Games, and I really do hope that I can get the money together to go back again next year and see how much it changes, because I know that it will. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. There's just so much more to say, you guys. I'll probably have to I'll just keep talking about it over the course of my next couple episodes. I was going to give you the manifestation techniques, but that was from Amy Westmoreland, but I'm going to skip that right now. We talked about Nicola Pharma a little bit last time. Diane Hennessy. She's really so cool to see. And then, I saw Tom Campbell on the last day. Like I said, that was a highlight for me. Just really, really special to be there in person with him. And I've heard every word he's ever said. Like, Tom talks about, he has this thing on his website called AI Guy that's been trained in everything he's ever said, and like all his books and all his lectures. And I'm like, I could be a Tom Campbell AI guy because I've listened to like everything. I feel like I have really internalized. I might not be able to explain the physics in the same terminology, but I understand his theory very, very well. And I understand the implications of it and the practical applications. And so, yeah, it's cool. And that's why I like to study by reading and writing and doing these episodes, is because I'm trying to really learn all of this stuff for myself so that I could go anywhere without my notes, without any technology. I could sit around a campfire and have these conversations and really have something to say because the knowledge is within me. That's what I'm all about, It's like anybody can write a script and read it on the internet, but do you really know what you're talking about? That's what I'm trying to do here, is teach myself the things that I want to know. And let's see. Oh, Adam Curry. Okay, this is a good thing for me to end on because this is getting kind of long, but Adam Curry was incredible. He gave a lecture on divination over the last 5,000 years and how it has evolved and where it's headed and future tech. And so I'm just going to skim through some of the notes from his lecture. He talked about astrology. He talked about augury, which is the interpreting of birds' flight patterns, onorom, onoromancy, dream interpretation, claromancy, casting lots, like the I Ching. He talked about necromancy, which is consulting the dead, according to him, for prophecy. Kind of different than what I had thought it was. Scrying is gaining visions from reflective surfaces. Bibliomancy is randomly opening a text and reading what's on the page for guidance. Chiromancy is palmistry. Geomancy is casting pebbles or drawing dots in the sand and then making lines between those dots and interpreting the shapes and patterns. Rune casting was like the interpretation of Norse or Germanic symbols. Cartomancy was a card version that was like pre-tarot, and then tarot came from an actual game, an Italian game that I think was called Tarocchi, and then that was changed by the French into this other version of interpreting the cards, which is what we know today as tarot or tarot. And dowsing, which is like using a pendulum or rods or suspended objects, or some people just do it with their hands and it's kind of a yes no thing. And then psychography is automatic writing. Ouija board is modern. He went into some more modern versions like the Ouija board, remote viewing, oracle decks. He talked about like mobile apps even now, and AI divination as like this new emerging thing. And then he talked about future tech. And so I wanted to share with you two of the sites that he told us about. One, I can't show you on my phone because I'm recording with my phone, but you can look it up right now. It's free. It's called microdowser.com. And I love this actually because you can put it in either hand, and the phone itself is going to measure your micro movements. So whereas like a pendulum is like you really feel, for me at least, I feel like I have to control it to get it moving because I can hold so still that that thing is not moving at all. And then I'm like, well, dang it, my micro movements aren't even getting this thing going. But with the phone, you're not even thinking about trying to move it. It measures yes. So you go to the site, microdowser.com, and then to calibrate it, you just start thinking yes. And I try to feel yes. So you're holding your phone, you click the thing to calibrate, and it's like, yes, I love my dog. Yes, I love whatever. Like, I love a good glass of wine. I love the green leaves. I love being out in nature. I love the feeling of jumping into a waterfall or whatever. And you feel yes, you think yes, 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 yes. And then it calibrates your micro movements, and then you calibrate no. So you just start saying like, no, I don't like it when people treat me this way. I don't like, this is how I did it. know this, know that, instead of just saying no, 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 no. Try to get the energy of no. Like, what is an actual no? Like, hell no, I do not want that. I don't like that. I'm not into that. And you just feel that energy and your micro movements calibrate. And then you can type in a question, ask it yes or no, and it'll give you like a percentage of how much your body was saying yes or no. And that's really cool because that's what dowsing is. And you can now do it with your phone. And I thought that was really fun. Now, what I will say is that dowsing, I think, is more useful for like emotional questions, because if you just start asking it like, is the sky blue? If you try to calibrate it to actual reality and ask it hard questions with hard answers, it's going to be all over the place. For me, at least, I couldn't get it to answer those kinds of questions. So I'm still like, well, whatever, this thing, it can only go so far. But for emotional questions like, should I do this or should I do that? And you're just kind of asking yourself for the answer and for your body to weigh in on this answer. It could be helpful for that, I think. But I'm at a point in my relationship to all of this stuff where I am looking for more certainty and I am looking for more repeatability and accuracy. And so I'm really interested. This is why I like remote viewing, because you have feedback and you can't just convince yourself that, like, well, I was sensing this. And so that you can spin yourself out in circles trying to over explain how, well, I saw a leaf. And even though the target was a glass of milk, tea also goes in a glass and tea is made with leaves. So I think I was picking up on that. Like, that's a stretch, you know what I mean? So don't delude yourself if you're really serious about this stuff, or do it if it's fun. But I mean, to me, that's not really that useful. It's just more confusion in a chaotic reality. So I like things that have strong feedback, but the dowsing is just fun to play around with. And then the other site that Adam Curry told us about is called Entangled Divination Platform, entangled.org. And you can go to that too. It's also free. I can't really explain to you exactly what's going on there, but I'm going to dig into it some more. I think it has to do with like the way that random number generators are influenced to become coherent during big moments in reality, like 9/11, for example. And this website is bringing more people into this entangled web of data that will eventually help to predict things like earthquakes. And they did give the example of the Kamchatka earthquake off the coast of Russia, eastern Russia, recently, and that they did have data that did predict that. Like, they had people weighing in, and what they found is that the people that were affected were the ones that had the precognitive ability to it. So the places that were actually impacted by that had more accuracy in predicting that that was about to happen. Now, this is pretty interesting because this could have practical applications, and it's kind of like how animals will sense that a disaster is coming and they'll flee that area. I think it was kind of similar to that, in the sense that, like, this is a way for humans to be able to display that same kind of intuitive ability in a um, mass way, I guess. And so, yeah, I have to do a little more research into that, but I did sign up. It's just a passive thing. Like, once you're in it, it just kind of sends you notifications, and I haven't like poked around and learned all about it yet, but that's called entangled.org if you want to check that out. And oh my gosh, I might have to do a whole other episode on this, but the coolest thing at the very end of the conference on Sunday in the morning was an ethics panel where we talked about the ethics of all of these things, and I will have to do that in another episode. So it was pretty powerful. That's where Danny Sheehan and Pam Coronado and Diane Hennessy and Gary Kraftsow and two other people were in there as well. Somebody named John, I don't know his last name, and then somebody else named maybe Michael. I'll have to look up again and see. Those two I wasn't that familiar with, but there's so much to say about ethics when it comes to this stuff. And when I went to one of my early Contact in the Deserts that I went to, the first one, I think, that was my question when people were talking. It was like a remote viewing panel, and I was like, let's talk about the ethics of this. Like, I want to hear about that. And I remember people were like pretty interested to answer that question, but also like it wasn't a big part of the discussion leading up to that. So I felt like, yeah, this is important. And it was cool to see at this conference that everybody else wanted to hear about that too, and that they had a whole panel dedicated to it. So, like I said, more on that next time. But anyway, I'm feeling inspired. I'm feeling like there's still a lot to process. And I definitely feel on the verge of some major breakthroughs myself, and very curious to see where all of my practices go. And you got to let me know if you're doing anything. Are you trying remote viewing? Are you trying out of body experience? Have you signed up for socialrv.com? Do you feel scared of this stuff? Do you feel excited about this stuff? Are you frustrated? Have you reached, a dead end? Do you want to jump in? Have you never even tried? Like, where are you at with all of this? And do you think that these things are helpers or distractions or just part of life like anything else? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.